You are standing in a public space where nothing is being argued, and yet everything has already been decided. A set of laws sits nearby, cut into a surface that does not change. People pass without stopping. No one explains it. No one needs to. A name is recorded somewhere out of sight. Not just the name, but the position attached to it. From this point forward, every interaction follows that record. What can be owned? What can be said? Who will be heard? The structure does not shift at the moment. It applies itself the same way each time, quietly, without negotiation. You begin to notice that nothing depends on fairness. It depends on placement. Once a person is fixed in the system, the outcomes narrow. Access opens or closes without explanation. The process continues whether anyone questions it or not. In this archive, you will see how Roman law assigns position, distributes rights, and maintains control through writing, record, and structure. If this quiet examination brings you a sense of clarity, you are welcome to remain. A surface is prepared before anything is decided. You are positioned close enough to see the material. It is not treated as decoration, it is treated as a working surface. Wood, wax, stone, bronze. Each choice carries a different kind of permanence. Wax can be corrected, stone cannot. Bronze is meant to endure handling, weather, and repetition. The system chooses its surface based on how long the rule is meant to hold and how widely it must be seen. A hand begins the process, not quickly, not casually. The act of writing is controlled. Letters are formed in a known order following patterns that have already been agreed upon. The language itself is standardized. Legal Latin does not wander. It avoids ambiguity. Each word is chosen because it has already been used in earlier decisions, earlier records, earlier rulings. Nothing is invented in the moment. You are not watching creativity. You are watching alignment. Before anything is written, there is already a structure in place. Magistrates oversee the wording. Scribes carry out the physical act. Advisors may review phrasing before it is fixed. The authority does not sit in the hand that writes. It sits in the chain that approves what is written. Once the text is formed, it is no longer flexible. A spoken rule can be adjusted. A memory can be disputed. A written rule resists both. It can be pointed to, it can be copied, it can be enforced without requiring the presence of the person who created it. This is where the system gains distance from individuals. The rule does not need its author to survive. Placement follows writing. You observe where the text is positioned. Public laws are set where they can be seen. Forums, central walkways, places of regular movement. The intention is not just visibility, it is repetition. People pass by, they read, they recognize. Over time, the rule becomes familiar, not because it is explained, but because it is present. Private records are handled differently. They are stored, organized, retrieved when needed. Contracts, ownership records, agreements. These are not meant for general viewing. They are meant for verification. When a dispute arises, the system does not ask for recollection. It asks for the document. The shift is quiet but complete. Custom becomes code. Practice becomes record. What was once negotiated case by case becomes fixed and referenced. The system reduces the number of decisions that need to be made in the moment by increasing the number of decisions that have already been made in writing. You begin to notice that writing does not just preserve rules, it shapes behavior before enforcement is required. People adjust themselves to what is written, not because they are reminded constantly, but because the presence of the text removes uncertainty. It becomes easier to comply than to challenge. The cost of being outside the written rule is predictable. Correction is also structured. If a law must be changed, it is not erased casually. It is amended, replaced, or formally struck. The process of changing a law is itself governed by law. This creates a layered system where even adjustment follows a fixed path. Nothing moves without passing through a controlled sequence. Copies are produced when needed. A law written once can be reproduced. This allows the same rule to exist in multiple locations at the same time. Consistency spreads outward. Local interpretation becomes less important because the same wording is available elsewhere. The system extends itself through duplication. You are not watching fairness being created. You are watching stability being constructed. The written form removes variation. It reduces negotiation. It allows authority to operate without constant presence. Once the rule is fixed, it can be applied by others who did not create it, to people who did not witness its creation. The power is not in the statement itself. It is in the fact that it has been written, placed, and recognized as something that does not shift when individuals come and go. The system holds because the text holds. A name is not enough. You observe that identification begins with classification. When a person is recorded, the entry does not stop at the name. It includes position, legal position. The system does not operate on personal identity alone. It operates on an assigned category. The process is deliberate. Registration occurs through structured events such as the census. Individuals present themselves or are presented by others. Information is gathered in a fixed format: name, family connection, property holdings, and most importantly, status. The entry is not free-form. It follows a pattern that ensures consistency across all records. Once entered, the classification does not drift. A person is not simply known, they are placed: citizen, freedman, slave, foreigner. Each of these categories carries defined limits and permissions. The system does not need to evaluate the individual each time. It refers back to the category. You begin to see that status acts as a shortcut for decision-making. Instead of asking what a person deserves, the system asks what their category allows. This removes the need for case-by-case judgment in many situations. It also removes variability. The response is already determined once the status is known. Movement between categories is controlled. A slave may become a freedman, a non-citizen may gain limited rights. Full citizenship may be granted under specific conditions. None of this happens informally. Each transition requires recognition by the system and is recorded as a change in status. Without that record, the change does not hold. You notice how dependent everything is on documentation. If a person claims a higher status than what is recorded, the system does not rely on assertion. It looks for proof, written proof. Without it, the claim does not carry weight. The record overrides the statement. Family plays a role, but not in the way you might expect. Status can be inherited, but it is still recorded. A child does not simply assume a position. The system recognizes lineage through documentation. Names, connections, and prior records are used to establish continuity. This ensures that status is traceable, not assumed. Disputes over status follow a defined path. If there is disagreement, it is not settled through argument alone. Evidence is presented, records are examined. Witnesses may support the claim, but their role is secondary to documentation. The outcome depends on what can be verified within the system. You begin to understand that status is not just descriptive, it is functional. It determines access, who can enter certain spaces, who can bring a case forward, who can own property in a recognized way, who can be punished in certain forms. The category shapes every interaction with the system. The system also limits visibility. Not everyone is recorded in the same way. Some individuals exist in detailed records. Others appear only when necessary. Some are tracked closely. Others are barely noted. This uneven attention is not accidental. It reflects the importance assigned to each category. You observe that the system does not require personal knowledge of individuals to function. It relies on the category as a stand-in. Decisions can be made without familiarity. The record provides enough information to determine the correct response according to the structure already in place. Over time, the category becomes more stable than the individual. A person may change circumstances, behavior, or relationships, but the recorded status remains until it is formally altered. This creates a separation between lived experience and legal position. The system responds to the latter. You are not watching identity being understood. You are watching identity being fixed. The record defines how the system sees the individual. That definition is used repeatedly across different situations without needing to be re-established each time. The result is quiet but consistent. Every interaction begins from the same point, not who the person believes they are, but what the system has written them to be. You observe that citizenship is not a single condition. It is arranged in layers. Each layer is defined in advance and attached to specific permissions. The system does not treat citizenship as a simple inclusion. It treats it as a structured range of access. A person may belong, but not in the same way as another. The distinction begins with recognition. A full citizen is recorded with complete standing. This includes the ability to enter formal legal processes, to contract under recognized forms, to appeal decisions, and to expect certain protections from punishment. These are not abstract benefits. They are procedural advantages that affect how the system responds at each stage. Below that, other forms of belonging exist. Limited citizenship, allied status, and subject populations are each assigned a narrower set of permissions. Some may trade but not hold land in the same way. Some may be governed but not represented. Some may be protected in certain matters but excluded from others. You begin to see that the system does not hide these differences. They are known, they are recorded, they are applied without adjustment. The structure is visible to those within it, even if it is not explained openly. Each tier affects how a person enters the system. When a dispute arises, the category determines the path. A full citizen may initiate a formal claim using recognized language and procedure. A non-citizen may require representation or may be limited to specific types of claims. In some cases, access is not available at all. The difference is not only in access, but in response. The same situation produces different outcomes depending on the tier. A citizen may receive a hearing with defined steps and timelines. A lower status individual may encounter delay, restriction, or dismissal. The system is not inconsistent. It is following its structure. You notice how this reduces uncertainty for those within higher tiers. They know what is available to them. They know which procedures will respond. This predictability reinforces compliance. It also reinforces separation. Those outside the higher tiers recognize the limits placed on them and adjust accordingly. Mobility between tiers is possible, but controlled. Citizenship may be granted as a reward, extended to communities, or earned through service. These changes are formal. They are recorded and recognized. Without that recognition, the change does not exist within the system. You observe that expansion often brings new populations into the structure. When new territories are incorporated, their inhabitants are assigned positions within the existing tiers. They are not treated as undefined. They are placed. This allows the system to extend without losing its internal order. The tiered structure also affects obligations. Higher tiers carry certain responsibilities. Military service, tax expectations, and participation in civic duties may be required. Lower tiers may be subject to authority without receiving the same protections. The exchange is not equal, it is structured. You begin to understand that equality is not the goal, clarity is. Each person knows where they stand in relation to the system. Each official knows how to respond based on that position. This reduces negotiation and reinforces the overall order. The structure holds because it is applied consistently. A person does not move between tiers based on circumstance in the moment. The category remains in place until it is formally changed. This creates stability across interactions. The system does not need to reassess each time. You are not observing a failure to achieve fairness. You are observing a system that does not aim for it. Rights are distributed according to position. Position is recorded. The system follows that record without deviation. The result is a hierarchy that operates quietly. No announcement is required. No explanation is repeated. The structure is understood through its effects. Access opens or closes depending on where the person is placed. A boundary is marked before a claim is recognized. You observe how the system treats property not as possession but as recorded ownership. The difference is important. Possession may be visible. Ownership must be documented. Without documentation, possession does not carry weight within the system. The process begins with identification. Land is described in relation to fixed points. Boundaries are noted using markers, neighboring plots, or physical features. Goods are listed with detail sufficient to distinguish them. The description is not casual. It must allow the property to be recognized later without confusion. Once identified, the property is attached to a person through record. This attachment is formal. It may involve contracts, witnessed agreements, or official registration. The method varies, but the outcome is the same. The system acknowledges the connection between the individual and the property. You notice that this acknowledgement changes how the system responds. If a dispute arises, the first question is not who currently holds the property. It is who is recognized as the owner. The answer is found in the record. The system moves from that point, not from observation alone. Transfer is also structured. Property does not move freely between individuals without recognition. Sale, inheritance, and gift each follow defined procedures. Witnesses may be required. Documents are produced. The transfer is recorded so that the system can update its understanding of ownership. Without this process, the transfer does not hold. A person may physically control an item or piece of land, but if the system does not recognize the change, protection does not follow. This creates a strong incentive to operate within the formal structure. You observe how ownership affects access to protection. Those with recognized property can bring claims. They can seek enforcement when boundaries are crossed. They can rely on the system to respond. Those without recognized ownership have limited standing. Their claims carry less weight or are not accepted. Property becomes a point of entry into the system. It provides a reason for the system to act on behalf of the individual. It creates a relationship between the person and the structure. Without that relationship, interaction is limited. You begin to see how this reinforces stability. Ownership is not easily changed without following the correct process. This reduces disputes over time. It also concentrates control. Those who hold property within the system maintain their position unless they choose or are forced to transfer it through recognized means. The system also defines what can be owned: land, goods, and in some cases people are treated as property under specific conditions. Each category has its own rules. The system does not treat all forms of property the same. It assigns different procedures and protections depending on the type. You notice how this classification shapes behavior. People organize their activities around what can be recognized and protected. They invest in property that the system will defend. They avoid arrangements that cannot be recorded. Over time, this aligns daily activity with the structure of the law. Enforcement follows recognition. If a boundary is crossed or property is taken, the response depends on the recorded ownership. Officials refer to the record to determine the correct action. The system does not need to investigate from the beginning. It starts from what is already established. You are not observing wealth alone. You are observing recognized ownership. The difference determines who the system protects and how quickly it responds. Property, once recorded, becomes a stable point within the structure. It anchors the individual in a way that unrecorded possession cannot. the result is consistent. Ownership defines protection. Protection reinforces ownership. The system maintains itself through this exchange. The same rule does not move the same way for every person. You observe how the system adjusts itself depending on who is being processed. The wording of the law may remain stable, but its application is guided by status. The structure does not announce this difference. It operates through it. A person enters a legal situation already carrying weight. That weight comes from recorded status: citizen, non-citizen, enslaved, freed. Each category shapes how the system responds before any facts are considered. The process does not begin from a neutral point. It begins from position. You notice how this affects accusation. Who may bring a claim is not open to everyone in the same way. Some individuals have direct access to formal accusation. Others require representation or are restricted to certain types of complaints. In some cases, the system limits who may speak against whom. The difference continues through evaluation. When a case is considered, the standing of the individuals involved influences how their statements are treated. A higher status individual may be presumed to operate within the system's expectations. A lower status individual may be examined more closely or limited in how they can present their position. This is not handled as a visible bias. It is built into procedure. You observe how punishment follows a similar pattern. The outcome is not determined solely by the act. It is shaped by the category of the person involved. Certain penalties are reserved for certain statuses. Others are avoided entirely for those with higher standing. The system maintains these distinctions without needing to justify them each time. You begin to see how this stabilizes the hierarchy. Individuals understand that their position affects not only their rights, but also their exposure. This knowledge influences behavior. It encourages alignment with the system among those who benefit from it and reinforces caution among those who do not. The structure also protects itself. Officials operate within the same framework. Their decisions are guided by recognized categories. This reduces personal risk. By following the established distinctions, they remain aligned with the system rather than appearing to act independently. You notice that privilege is not hidden, it is normalized. The differences are consistent enough that they become expected. Over time, the structure feels natural to those within it. The system does not need to explain why outcomes differ. It only needs to apply its rules in the same way each time. Access to defense reflects the same pattern. Higher status individuals may secure representation, gather support, and navigate procedure with greater ease. Lower status individuals may encounter limits at each step. The system does not prevent them from participating entirely, but it narrows the path. You observe how this affects resolution. Cases involving higher status individuals may be handled with attention to maintaining order and continuity. Cases involving lower status individuals may be resolved more quickly, with less procedural complexity. The system allocates its attention based on position. You begin to understand that the law is not a single pathway. It is a set of parallel tracks. Each track is defined by status. Movement along one track does not grant access to another without formal change. The system maintains separation while appearing unified. You are not watching inconsistency. You are watching structured differences. The outcomes vary because the inputs are categorized. The system does not aim to produce the same result for everyone. It aims to produce the correct result according to its internal order. The result is predictable. Once the status is known, the range of possible outcomes narrows. The system operates within that range without needing to reconsider its structure. Entry into the system is not automatic. You observe that participation requires more than presence. It requires alignment with procedure. The system does not respond to informal requests. It responds to actions that follow its established steps. A claim begins with form. Words must be arranged correctly. The structure of the claim must match recognized patterns. This is not about clarity alone, it is about compatibility with the system. If the form does not match, the process does not begin. You notice how this limits access. Those who understand the required forms can move forward. Those who do not are delayed or excluded. The system does not adjust itself to accommodate unfamiliar approaches. It remains fixed, requiring individuals to adapt. The sequence of steps is controlled. A claim is introduced, acknowledged, and then moved through stages. Each stage has conditions that must be met before the next is allowed. Skipping a step is not permitted. The process must unfold in order. You observe how officials manage this flow. They do not create the process as they go. They follow it. Their role is to ensure that each requirement is satisfied before allowing movement to continue. This keeps the system consistent across different cases and locations. Time is also structured. There are periods within which actions must occur. Deadlines are recognized. Delays have consequences. The system uses time as a way to regulate participation. Those who cannot meet the timing requirements may lose the ability to proceed. You begin to see how language functions as a barrier. Certain terms carry specific meanings within the system. Using the wrong term can alter the interpretation of a claim or prevent it from being recognized. This creates a layer of complexity that favors those familiar with the system's language. Representation becomes important. Individuals who lack knowledge of procedure often rely on those who understand it. These intermediaries guide the claim through the required steps. Their presence is not optional in many cases. It is necessary for the system to engage. You notice how this concentrates control. Those who understand procedure hold influence. They can determine whether a claim is presented correctly and whether it moves forward. The system does not distribute this knowledge evenly. Errors are handled without flexibility. If a step is performed incorrectly, the system does not adjust to compensate. It requires correction before proceeding. In some cases, the opportunity to correct may be limited. The process does not pause indefinitely. You observe that procedure shapes outcomes before decisions are made. A claim that enters the system correctly has a path forward. A claim that fails to meet procedural requirements may never reach evaluation. The difference is not in the merit of the claim, but in its alignment with the system. You begin to understand that access is controlled quietly. There are no visible barriers, no physical gates. The restriction exists in the structure of the process itself. Only those who can follow it are able to move through it. The system maintains order through this control. By limiting entry to those who meet its requirements, it reduces unpredictability. It ensures that cases are presented in a way that can be handled consistently. It also reinforces dependence on those who understand the process. You are not watching justice being denied. You are watching participation being filtered. The system remains open in form, but selective in function. Only those who align with its procedure are able to engage fully. You observe that nothing is allowed to remain informal for long. An agreement may begin in conversation, but it does not stay there. It is moved into record. Terms are set down in writing, names are attached, conditions are specified. The system does not rely on memory to preserve these details. A document is created with purpose. It is not written to describe an event. It is written to define it. The document becomes the reference point for what has occurred. If there is later disagreement, the system returns to the written version, not to recollection. You notice how structure appears in every record. Dates are included. Names are spelled in consistent forms. Witnesses may be listed. The language follows patterns that have been used before. This repetition is not accidental. It ensures that documents can be understood and compared across different situations. Storage follows creation. Documents are not left where they are written. They are collected, organized, and placed where they can be retrieved. Some remain with individuals. Others are held in official repositories. The location depends on the type of record and how often it may need to be accessed. You observe how retrieval is handled. When a question arises, the system does not ask for explanation first. It asks for the document. The presence of a record allows the system to move forward without reconstructing the event. The absence of a record creates uncertainty that the system does not easily resolve. Copies are used to extend reliability. A single document may be reproduced. One copy may remain with the parties involved. Another may be stored elsewhere. This reduces the risk of loss and allows the same information to be accessed from different points within the system. You begin to see how documentation replaces trust. Individuals do not need to rely on each other's memory or honesty to the same degree. The record provides a fixed reference. This changes how agreements are made. People act with the expectation that the written form will define the outcome. Alteration is controlled. A document cannot be changed without leaving a trace. Corrections are noted. New documents may be created to replace earlier ones. The system does not allow silent modification. This preserves the integrity of the record over time. You notice how documentation interacts with status and property. Status is recorded. Ownership is recorded. Agreements related to both are documented in ways that allow them to be verified later. The system connects these elements through writing, creating a network of records that support each other. Loss of documentation has consequences. If a record cannot be produced, the system may not recognize the claim associated with it. The absence of proof limits the ability to act within the system. This encourages careful maintenance of documents by those who depend on them. You observe that the system treats the written record as more stable than individual testimony. A person may speak with confidence, but the system gives greater weight to what has been recorded. This does not eliminate testimony, but it places it in a supporting role rather than a primary one. Over time, the archive grows. Each document adds to a larger body of records. This accumulation allows the system to operate with increasing consistency. Past decisions and agreements remain accessible. They can be referenced without needing to be recreated. You are not watching information being stored for convenience. You are watching authority being preserved. The record allows the system to function without constant re-evaluation. It provides a stable base from which decisions can be made repeatedly. If it is written, it can be used. If it is not written, it remains outside the system's reach. The system does not need to display force constantly. You observe that enforcement is present even when it is not active. Authority is visible in specific forms. Officials carry symbols that indicate their role. Their presence signals that the system can act when required. These figures do not operate independently. They act within defined limits. Their authority is tied to the position they represent. When they intervene, they do so as an extension of the system, not as individuals making personal decisions. You notice how enforcement follows recognition. An action is taken only after the system has established a basis for it. A claim is validated. A decision is recorded. The response is then carried out. This sequence ensures that force is applied in alignment with the structure already in place. The method of enforcement is consistent. Actions are performed in ways that are recognizable. This consistency reinforces the system's presence. Individuals understand what to expect when enforcement occurs. This predictability reduces resistance and confusion. You observe how compliance often happens before force is used. The knowledge that enforcement is available influences behavior. People adjust their actions to avoid reaching the point where intervention is required. The system relies on this anticipation as much as on direct action. Public visibility plays a role. Enforcement actions are not always hidden. They may occur in places where others can observe them. This is not for display alone. It reinforces the connection between the written rule and its physical consequence. You begin to see how enforcement supports other parts of the system. Property boundaries are respected because they can be defended. Status distinctions are maintained because they can be enforced. Procedure is followed because deviation can lead to intervention. Each element is backed by the same underlying capacity. The use of force is measured. Not every situation requires the same response. The system applies enforcement in proportion to the recognized issue. This controlled application maintains order without creating unnecessary disruption. You notice how officials are also constrained. They cannot act outside their authority without consequence. Their actions are subject to the same system they enforce. This creates a balance where enforcement is guided by structure rather than impulse. You observe that enforcement extends beyond physical action. It includes the ability to compel participation, to require appearance, and to ensure that decisions are carried out. The system uses a range of methods to maintain alignment, not all of which involve direct force. You begin to understand that the presence of enforcement stabilizes expectation. Individuals know that the system is capable of acting. This knowledge shapes behavior even in the absence of immediate intervention. It creates a background condition where compliance becomes the more predictable choice. You are not watching force being used as a primary tool. You are watching it as a support. The system relies first on structure, record, and procedure. Enforcement exists to maintain those elements when they are challenged. The result is steady. The law remains in place not because it is constantly defended, but because it can be defended when necessary. You observe the system move outward without changing its shape. New territories do not require a new structure. They are fitted into the existing one. The process begins with assessment. Populations are identified, counted, and placed into categories that already exist within the system. Nothing is left undefined. Communities are not treated as a single unit for long. They are broken into parts that can be recorded. Individuals are assigned status. Groups are given positions within the broader structure. This allows the system to operate in familiar terms, even in unfamiliar places. You notice how citizenship is used with precision. It is not granted uniformly. It is extended in stages. Some are given partial rights. Others receive full recognition. The system uses these distinctions to manage integration. Each level of citizenship carries a different relationship to authority. The process is recorded at each step. Grants of status are written. Changes are documented. This ensures that the extension of citizenship is not temporary or informal. It becomes part of the permanent record, allowing the system to treat new individuals as it would those already within its core. You observe how local practices are adjusted. Existing customs may continue, but only within limits. Where they conflict with the system, they are modified or replaced. The written law becomes the reference point. Over time, local variation narrows as the central structure becomes more dominant. Administration follows classification. Officials are assigned to oversee regions. Their role is to apply the system consistently. They rely on records, procedures, and established categories rather than local interpretation. This reduces variation and reinforces the central structure. You notice how obligations are introduced alongside rights. Newly recognized individuals may gain access to certain protections, but they also assume responsibilities. Taxes are collected. Service may be required. The system balances inclusion with expectation, ensuring that expansion supports its operation. The distribution of status creates alignment. Those who receive higher levels of recognition tend to operate more closely with the system. They adopt its procedures. They rely on its protections. This creates points of stability within newly integrated areas. You observe how resistance is managed. The system does not respond to opposition by abandoning its structure. It reinforces it. Records are maintained. Procedures are followed. Enforcement is applied when necessary. Over time, consistent application reduces variation and encourages compliance. Communication is structured through the same mechanisms. Orders, decisions, and updates are written and distributed. This ensures that the same information reaches multiple locations without alteration. The system extends its presence through consistent messaging. You begin to see that expansion is not only territorial, it is administrative. The system grows by increasing the number of people and places that operate within its framework. Each addition strengthens the network of records, procedures, and enforcement that define it. You are not watching a collection of different regions. You are watching a single structure applied across distance. The system remains recognizable in each location because it relies on the same elements. Status is assigned, rights are distributed, records are maintained, enforcement is available. The result is continuity. Even as the system expands, it does not lose its form. It repeats itself, creating a stable pattern that can be applied again and again. You observe that the system does not end with the individual. A life is recorded, but it is not treated as a closed unit. The information attached to that life continues to function after it has ended. Status, property, and relationships remain active within the system. The record does not stop. Documents associated with an individual are preserved. Ownership records, legal agreements, and status classifications remain accessible. These records allow the system to continue operating without interruption. You notice how property moves through defined channels. When ownership changes due to death, it does not occur informally. The transfer follows established procedures. Heirs are identified. Claims are verified. The new ownership is recorded. This ensures continuity and prevents uncertainty. Status can extend through lineage. Family connections are used to determine the position of those who follow. This is not assumed without verification. Records of parentage, marriage, and prior status are used to establish continuity. The system relies on these connections to maintain order across generations. You observe how names carry weight. A recorded name is linked to previous records. This linkage allows the system to track relationships and obligations over time. The name becomes part of a chain that extends beyond a single life. Disputes do not disappear. If there are unresolved matters, they are addressed through the same procedures. Claims may be brought by or against those connected to the individual. The system continues to process these issues until they are resolved within its structure. You notice how obligations persist. Debts, agreements, and responsibilities may carry forward. The system does not reset them automatically. It provides mechanisms to transfer or settle them, ensuring that they remain within the framework of record and procedure. The archive grows with each transition. Every transfer, every confirmation, every adjustment adds to the body of records. This accumulation strengthens the system's ability to operate consistently. Past information remains available to support future decisions. You observe that memory is not required for continuity. The system does not depend on individuals remembering previous arrangements. It depends on the preservation of records. This allows it to maintain stability even as people change. You begin to see how permanence is constructed. It is not based on tradition alone. It is built through documentation, procedure, and recognition. Each element reinforces the others, creating a structure that extends beyond individual lifespans. You are not watching the end of a life. You are watching the continuation of a position within the system. The individual is one part of a larger framework. When that part is removed, the framework adjusts and continues to operate using the records that remain. The result is steady, Status is not temporary. Ownership is not isolated. The record does not fade. The system continues, holding each position in place until it is formally changed. The surface remains where it was, unchanged. The records are still in place, holding their form without movement. Around you, the system continues as it did before, steady, quiet, and already decided. Here in the archive, even the smallest systems hold entire worlds together. If this quiet history brings you rest, you are welcome to return.